So remember, if you want to support the work I'm doing, go to flipnormals.com, creator Filo Vivero, or ArtStation, Filo Vivero store, or gumroad.com, filovivero.gumroad.com, and help me out. I appreciate it. Okay, so the first thing we're going to set up is a basic skeleton for her. And so what I've done is followed probably any tutorial you've ever done. But the first thing I did was I set up this armature to be display as wire in the viewport, and that way it'll allow it to be a little bit see-through. But then also I said in the bones, or I should say here, I don't know what that's called, that's the object data properties for the armature. I have display as bbone, and so that will make them small. You could change their sizes. So what you could do is any given bone, you can grab it, let's say this one right here, for example, and then you go to the bone properties here, bendy bones, and you could change the size of it. You can make it big or wide or whatever. And so what I've done is made all of them rather small, 0.005, and so that's going to be, I believe that's 5 millimeters. Yes, I believe that's 5 millimeters. And so you could make, so what I do is I set the bones in her body to be one size. Later on when I'm creating bones in her fingers or around her eyes, I'll make them even smaller yet so that they don't take up so much space in the screen. And so right, I've just added the basic bones that everyone's got. There's a center of gravity bone, which is a child of the root, but otherwise is a parent of all the other bones. So if you move that, her entire body will move around from that point right there. There's also, of course, the root bone. The root bone here is just at the root of her, and so again, if you rotate that, it'll rotate her entire body, but from that spot instead of from up here. And then I've got a couple other bones that I suppose are different than everyone else that are a little bit special. So I'll talk about this right now. So I've got a point down parent. If you look at that, it's the parent of that is the root bone, but has a special state around it in that it is not inheriting the rotation. So you see this inherit rotation. Most of the time when you're in pose mode, and you click a bone, and you look at the parenting relations here, you'll see inherit rotation is checked on pretty much every bone, and you almost always want inherit rotation. Well, you're going to have a point-bound parent, which is a direct child of the root, that unchecks the inherit rotation, and then there's going to be a child of that way down below her, way down below the rig, way down here, called point down. And if I scroll out, you'll see this is way below her. Normally she's way up here. This is probably about 10 body lengths below her. And so that is a child of the point down parent. And because the point down parent doesn't have inherit rotation, I turned off inherit rotation for this one as well, but I don't think it matters. Then what will happen is if I, anywhere on her, anywhere that I move her rig, or in any way I move her rig, I suppose is the thing to say there. Let's see if I can click the rig. There we go. If I take this rig and say twist it like that, then you'll see there's no matter what her rig is, no matter where I've put her root bone, or no matter how I've turned her, there's always going to be a bone directly below her, about 10 body lengths below her that you could track to for purposes of pointing down. We'll use that for breasts, we'll use that for her hair, for earrings, for various things that we always want hanging straight down. We'll use that, and we could do a damp track to that point down bone way down below her body, way down there. So that is something I've set up. Otherwise, it's pretty much exactly like you would expect. There's a bone in her upper arm, a bone in her lower arm, a single bone for her hand here, bone, some bones going from her spine. So I've got 2 bones in the lower part of her spine above her hips, and then I've got 1 big bone here for her rib cage area, and then I've got 1 bone in her neck and another bone for her head, and then I've got a bone for her jaw, which looks like it's actually parented a little bit. We'll have to be setting that up a bit more. But we've got all the basic bones. Then I've got bones for her eyes. Those are just attached to the bone itself there. In the future, we're going to have to add a bunch of bones around her eyes for actually moving her eyelids and stuff. Then I've got, of course, a bone in her upper leg, a bone in her lower leg, 1 bone in her foot for turning the foot. And that's about it. Those are going to be control bones. So the control bones are going to be for major body motions. They're going to be for moving her arms. They're going to be for moving her hands. We're going to be creating an extra hand rig on top of this, so that she'll be a child of that, which will have bones for all of her fingers and thumbs and such things as that. And we'll be doing that, of course, everywhere. We'll have a foot rig that's a child of that foot bone there. We're going to have shoulder rig, which will be probably a child of the collarbone, the clavicle here. But we'll have a bunch of extra bones for pectoral and for latissimus and for the back here, and also for the clavicle, scapula. Also for the scapula here, and then we'll have a bunch of bones around her midriff to cause better deforms. Right now, as you can see, if we grab that and turn it, her hips collapse and do strange things. So we're going to be adding bones for the hip area and gluteus area. So all of that we're going to be adding on to this basic rig. But this is a basic rig, and right now, as you can see, the deforms are on and that, so it causes her mesh to deform when we move the rig. We'll be turning all that off. Eventually, these will just be controls, and there will be other bones which will do all the deforming, and those bones will be what we'll be setting up over the series of this course. I believe that is a parent of her hair, right? That makes it a little easier. I can change this bone in various ways in edit mode without messing up her hair. That's, I don't know, you might find that useful. Go ahead and attach her hair to a bone, attach her eyes to these bones, attach her whatever other bits. So I've got whiskers on her. Those are actually just attached to her mesh, attached to the vertexes on her mesh. And the bikini is attached via a modifier, surface deform modifier, to her body. That way it just doesn't matter what I do with her body, the bikini will follow along, and she'll never show you parts of her that we don't want to see. At the very end, I'll be taking off her clothes for the purposes of rigging her breasts and her genitals and other fiddly bits. Well, for most of the course, we're going to go ahead and leave the bikini on her so that she's a safe for work girl. There we go. So most of the time when I'm working with her armature, I'm going to click her mesh first, then I'm going to click her armature, and then I'm going to work with it. And that way, at any given moment I want to parent, I can just hit Command P and parent with automatic weights, and that'll parent her mesh to the armature. And that way, when I do things like, suppose I want to fix this hand bone, then I can take that parent automatic weights and it'll fix it. All right, I actually have a set of bones I've already started to work with as an experiment for her arms. That's why that's happening. We'll go ahead and delete those bones in a bit, and that'll cause that mesh to go back to proper, and then we'll also be able to set it back up again later. All right, thanks for watching the very first thing. Like I say, you should be able to watch any tutorial on how to set this up. It's just very basic. 3 bones here, 3 bones here, some bones in her spine, some bones that are in her clavicles here, and her face and jaw, and just a couple things there. And then if you set yours up like that, then you'll be ready to follow along.